In Mozambique, aid is slow in arriving as some towns ravaged by Cyclone Idai remain all but inaccessible. 4 years on, remembering al-Shabaab's deadly attack on Kenya's Garissa University College. And on this World Autism Day, a mission to educate and move beyond labels. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. 2 weeks after Cyclone Idai slammed into Mozambique, some towns remain all but inaccessible due to roads and bridges being washed away. The situation has slowed the delivery of desperately needed food and medicine, with most of the aid arriving by air. Mohamed Yusuf has our report from Buzi.
Buzi resident Sabe Magombo buried her elderly mother on Saturday, but she has no time to mourn.
I am alone. I have no one to look up to. I have nothing to do and no strength to work. I have a sick person at home. The only thing to do now is to walk around looking for food. If I get a cup of rice, I go home, cook and eat with my family.
Hundreds of people died here when Cyclone Idai hit central Mozambique in mid-March. The cyclone swamped the entire town of Buzi, cutting it off from the rest of the country. Staying above water, residents say, was not easy.
We got out of our home and headed to a nearby school, then water came into the school. We moved to the police station, which was on higher ground, then water came in. We finally moved to a one-story building and stayed on the rooftop.
With the roads destroyed, aid groups can only access the town by sea and air. Food and medicine are finally getting in and reaching some cyclone victims for the first time.
I was not able to get help before when the flood came. I got sick, suffering from malaria. I could not go out to get assistance.
Some business owners lost everything.
I feel injured and disgraced. I have nothing. Even getting food is a problem. I have nothing to sell. I am left with nothing.
While the town recovers from Cyclone Idai, its 150,000 residents expect to depend on humanitarian aid to survive for some months to come. Mohamed Yusuf for VOA News, Buzi, Mozambique.
U.S. Centers for Disease Control epidemiologist Dr. Rachel Edoa is in Mozambique to help with the recovery. Our VOA reporting team on the ground in Beira, Amancio Velanculos and Karina Chaudhry, spoke with Dr. Edoa and with storm survivor Helen Fernando.
The primary role of the United States government, which includes the Centers for Disease Control, is to support the government of Mozambique and the Ministry of Health in its response to this cyclone disaster. That means initially the focus of the efforts have been supporting the ministry's and the government's desire to get basic necessities to the people of Mozambique, particularly in the areas that have been affected. That would be shelter, clean water, food, and basic medicines. CDC is supporting the ministry in its management of the situation. The ministry is seeking to reestablish primary health care services, and in particular where CDC's expertise has been invited. We are supporting them in trying to make sure there's a way to detect diseases of outbreak potential, which means diseases that spread easily from person to person in settings in which people are not in their normal living environments.
After the cyclone, we had floods, followed now by cholera. And all of this is hitting us at once. We need more help, more medicine to keep us safe. People are now dying in hospitals. Day after day, people are suffering.
Initially, in the first 1, 2, and 3 weeks after a disaster such as this, the most important thing is to reestablish basic services like clean drinking water, food, shelter, and basic medicines, and those are priorities that the government has taken leadership on, and as I said, U.S. government is supporting. We have provided military aircraft, helicopters, as well as cargo planes to assist in moving supplies from the capital city into the affected areas. One of the things that the ministry is doing now is to give partners, including CDC, an opportunity to support the development of a rapid response capacity, which is basically gathering people who have the capacity to go into communities and assist with outbreak investigation, and where necessary, encourage those who might have been affected to seek help at a proper treatment facility. The other task that we've been given is to provide support to the cholera vaccination campaign that's underway this week. The Ministry of Health is leading the efforts in ensuring that the communities where there's a possible risk of this particular diarrheal illness coming to affect the community, that there's an opportunity for people to receive the vaccine ahead of being exposed.
Viewers, Amancio Vilanculos and Karina Chaudhary spoke with Dr. Rachel Idor and with Cyclone Idai survivor Helen Fernando. Now, for more on the aftermath of Cyclone Idai, Viewers Portuguese reporter Amancio Vilanculos joins me now live from Beira by phone. Amancio, how are the affected areas coping and how are they recovering, in fact, from this devastating cyclone?
Well, thank you, Vincent. Actually, there's a difference between affected areas. Like in places like Nyamatanda and Buz, where places severely hit by the floods that came after the cyclone, people are really living in accommodation camps because their houses were destroyed. And these people are the most poor, and they cannot rebuild their house at this time. They're getting food, they're getting some medical assistance. But as we speak to them, they really want to go back to their place, but there's not yet a clear response from the government or other organizations in terms of helping them to rebuild their house. While in the city of Beira, which is the second major city of Mozambique and with an important port that serves Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, people are back to a kind of a normal life. People are trying to recover from the cyclone. Like yesterday, we went to the railway company, the port. They're fixing what has been destroyed, but we saw that ships are dealing with the container. Professionals are working in their place. In the accommodation centers of the surrounding areas of Beira, we see those who cannot afford to rebuild their own house. And also business. Now, I would say there may be over 50% now operational because they have to recover from the cyclone and get more money to rebuild their infrastructure. Some shops are actually working while they are trying to rebuild them. So there's this difference between rural areas where we have the most vulnerable people who do not have any incomes, and they have seen their farms or their farming land destroyed. And in the city, those who have a job or they can at least go to an informal market, sell something, they are always working. And also, we went to the site where the fishing community is. They're already starting working since the season began yesterday. So this is the initial assessment I can give.
Okay, now, what is the latest on the cholera outbreak?
Well, the cholera outbreak is another point of concern. It has been reported that, as far as I know, at least one person already died out of cholera, and the cases have been increasing. The good news is, as from tomorrow, they are starting this oral vaccination, and they aim at reaching 900 people in all the regions affected by the flooding. But as we talk to people living in these accommodation centers, they tell us there's another issue because people are not used to certain way of sanitation. So while others, they understand they need to stay in a clean place, some other people are not really obeying to the rules, or at least to the information they're getting from health professionals from various parts of the world.
Okay.
They're here, local professionals, and also professionals from places like Italy, the U.S., even professionals from Angola helping Mozambique to recover from the impact of the cyclone Idai.
Well, Amancio, excellent reporting. Thank you very much. That's Amancio Vilanculos, a Portuguese reporter reporting live from Beira. Now, in North Africa, hundreds of students marched in Algiers on Tuesday, demanding the immediate resignation of President Abdelaziz Bouteflika and the replacement of Algeria's political system. This comes a day after the veteran ruler announced he would leave by the end of the month. The president's office says longtime leader will step down by April 28th, when his term is due to end. The announcement comes after weeks of mass protests against the president and his government. The ailing 82-year-old leader has rarely been seen in public since suffering a stroke in 2013. He has ruled Algeria since 1999. Algeria is scheduled to hold a presidential election on April the 18th. To East Africa now, where Kenya's Garissa University on Tuesday marked 4 years since an Al-Shabaab militant attack claimed 148 lives, most of them students. While the Somali terrorist group has claimed other assaults since then, it remains their deadliest attack inside Kenya. Tossing grenades and spraying bullets at cowering students, the attackers initially killed indiscriminately. Later, they freed some Muslims and instead targeted Christian students during the siege that lasted about 15 hours. During the attack, officials said 148 people died, with at least 79 wounded, many critically. The university reopened in January, 9 months after the attack. More than 400 people have been killed by Al-Qaeda, allied Al-Shabaab in the East African nation since April 2013, including some 67 people who died in an attack on a shopping mall in the capital, Nairobi, in September of that year. In North Africa, hundreds of students marched in Algiers on Tuesday, and we have already mentioned that, demanding the resignation of Bouteflika, the president of Algeria. But let's now move on to the East African region again. We want to stay in East Africa as the 25th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide approaches on Sunday, April the 7th. We bring the most, really the moving stories of those who lived through one of the darkest periods of African history. In the second installment of our Survivor series, ordinary Rwandans share their stories of loss, survival, and hope for their country. And now this is Nzeyimana's story.
I remember many things, but one that I cannot forget is the death of my two young sisters. I always think I'll see them again someday. I heard that they died, but I never saw their bodies. People told me they'd been exhumed from mass graves, but I never saw them personally. I always think that when I wake up one morning, I'll meet them. Of all things that happened during the genocide, this is what remains intense in my heart. The reason this memory remains fresh in my mind is that shortly before genocide broke out, my 7-year-old and 3.5-year-old sisters and I were together somewhere. We'd visited some people in a certain home. I saved my life and left them there. I always think they may have continued to live even after I left them. Unfortunately, reliable sources confirmed that they were killed and that their bodies were exhumed from mass graves. So I always feel that there's a mission I've failed to accomplish. I was their elder brother, and I was supposed to look after them. Even though I didn't have the ability to save them, my heart always throws that guilt back to me. I was 12 years when genocide ended, and I had nobody to rely on. I had no one to take care of me, and I found myself in Savi Orphanage, which was located in former Ngoma commune. Life was tough there. I spent only 1 week in the orphanage. Then colleagues of my age and I decided to go to Kigali. I knew nobody there. I normally crack a joke and say I'm a former street child in Kigali who now owns his own house in the same Kigali. I wandered into families, but I ended up in a religious orphanage that raised me until I finished my university studies. I own a home, and I'm a father of 2 children. First of all, forgiveness relieves the one who forgives than it does to the one forgiven. I accepted what happened to us, that our loved ones were killed by either people we didn't know or the people we knew. Our hearts are clean. We forgave them, even though some of them didn't ask for forgiveness. Others don't even acknowledge their crimes. We forgave them in order to have our hearts relieved and live a smooth life. A reconciled nation is a country where its citizens live in harmony without any form of segregation, whether it's based on race, tribe, hate, or origin. A country that offers equal opportunity to all citizens without nepotism or favoritism. A country that unites its citizens and provides them with the means so as to develop together, building their nation.
Well, since the end of 1994 genocide, Rwanda has made progress in recovering from the devastation. Its economy has been growing steadily since 2003. That's according to the World Bank. Rwanda now also has the highest percentage of female parliamentarians in the world, more than 60%. VOA correspondent Mariama Diallo has more.
It started on April 6, 1994, when a plane carrying Rwanda's Hutu president Juvenal Habyarimana and his Burundian counterpart was shut down. Mary Berry is an international studies professor at the University of Denver in Colorado.
There was a lot of confusion and, of course, a scramble for power within his administration. And over the next several months, the targets expanded, and Tutsi civilians in Rwanda became seen as the enemy. And the level of brutality, of course, was tremendous. Just over 3 months, perhaps 800,000 Rwandans were killed, and the vast majority of those killed were Tutsi.
Following the genocide, the Rwandan Patriotic Front Paul Kagame became the nation's de facto leader, first as vice president to Pasteur Bizimungu and later president of the country. Fast forward 25 years later, people are still grappling with what happened. Nadine Yitegeka was only 3 when the genocide unfolded. She's a recent graduate from Rwanda's Akila Institute for Women.
We have a generation now of people whose parents are in prison, a generation that is not like me. They don't even have any parents left. So trauma and healing, it's a process. We are at a good stage now.
One sign of that, the large number of women who became members of parliament.
We used to be a very patriarchal society, and seeing these women break these rules is inspiring. As a young woman, it's possible to do even beyond what they've done, because for me, there are challenges they faced that I won't have to.
Ironically, Rwanda's genocide opened the doors for women because most of the casualties were men. With a survival rate of 70%, women entered fields once closed to them. Women lawmakers who make up more than 60% of the seats have made a difference in crafting policy, according to Berry.
Perhaps the most notable one was a bill related to gender-based violence. And Rwanda's, because of female legislators' leadership on this issue, Rwanda became one of the countries in the world that really put forth progressive and innovative laws and also institutions related to countering and preventing gender-based violence.
But Berry, who wrote a book about women and violence in Rwanda and Bosnia-Herzegovina, says Rwandan women still have a long way to go.
There hasn't been a transformation of patriarchal power relations within the home or within marriage, and there has not been a fundamental, real transformation of how political power is wielded, because the political power in Rwanda is directly rooted and kind of held by the executive.
Berry says while the Rwandan government has benefited globally from its empowerment of women in parliament, she worries about the crackdown on political dissent with the recent jailing of female opposition leaders Victoire Ingabire and Diane Rwigara. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Washington.
Well, joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Amadou with very useful information about autism. Lino.
Thank you, Vincent. Well, a study conducted by researchers in Denmark suggests the measles, mumps, and rubella MMR vaccine isn't associated with an increased risk of autism, even among kids who are at high risk because they have a sibling with the disorder. In the study, researchers examined data on more than 657,000 children born in Denmark to Danish-born mothers from 1999 to 2010. The researchers also followed children from age 1 through the end of August 2013. During this time, over 6,000 children were diagnosed with autism. Overall, 95% of the children in the study got the MMR vaccine. A report in the Annals of Internal Medicine indicates that those who got vaccinated were 7% less likely to develop autism than children who didn't get vaccinated. Children with autistic siblings were more than 7 times likely to be diagnosed with autism than those without this family history. Boys were 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism than girls. The researchers say parents should not skip the vaccine out of fear for autism. Now, April is Autism Month here in the United States, and April 2nd is World Autism Day, a day to acknowledge the challenges and opportunities experienced by people on the autism spectrum. The day is also set aside to raise awareness and support towards research and initiatives which promote inclusivity for people with autism. This disorder also includes a range of conditions characterized by some degree of impaired social behavior, communication, and language. It involves a narrow range of interests and activities that are both unique to the individuals and carried out repetitively. The condition begins in childhood and tends to persist into adolescence and adulthood. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, autism affects an estimated 1 in 59 children in the United States today. The environment in a neonatal intensive care unit can be overwhelming as staff care for infants who are ill or were born premature. Many exhausted parents and loved ones can't be with their newborns round the clock, but at one Long Beach, California hospital, trained volunteers are stepping in to help. Known as NICU cuddlers, they give infants the human touch that is so vital to every baby. For VOA, Angelina Bagdasarian visited the hospital and has this story narrated by Anna Rice.
Good morning, baby. How are you today?
Baby Reginald is finally ready to go home. He was born a month premature and spent weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit. Carolyn Quijano, a hospital volunteer, spent a lot of time holding and gently rocking Reginald when his mother was away.
This one I love, because they're so sweet, and some of them are needy, but they're all just wonderful. And I'm very grateful to the parents that they let me hold their babies and let me rock them for hours.
Volunteers like Quijano are professional preemie cuddlers here at Miller Children's Hospital in Long Beach. The hospital carefully screens volunteers whose job is to provide the newborns human contact while their loved ones are away.
The cuddlers range in age from 21 to probably 82 years old. And some are retired, some are students. We have men, we have women, we have all different interests, but the main interest is they want to support the infants. So they really love babies, and that's why they come.
Carolyn retired from her job a few months before joining the program.
For about 6 months, I was from June to December, I was at home. I cleaned the kitchen out, I cleaned the closets, I cleaned my garage. And then I said, you know what, I don't want to sit around. So I think that I will do some volunteer work.
Each cuddling session lasts about 45 minutes, then a short break and more cuddling.
Physiologically, when a human holds another human, we release endorphins. So the cuddler benefits by relaxing with the endorphins, and the infants have less corticosteroids that they release for stress.
The 13-year-old program helps volunteers feel needed, babies to thrive, and finally, it gives parents comfort knowing their child is getting therapeutic cuddles even when they're not there.
I didn't know that they offered the program as for cuddlers. So when I walked in one day and I saw a cuddler with him, it put me at ease a lot because I know that someone's here holding him when I'm not.
Other hospitals around the country have similar programs helping newborns recover and go home to their families as soon as possible. For Angelina Bagdasaryan in Long Beach, California, Anna Rice, VOA News.
And that's our health report for today. So stay in touch for more. Find me on Twitter at Lenormudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, and thank you very much for joining us today, Lenore. Now be sure to watch for Lenormudou every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa right here on Africa 54. Well, and now here is what's trending. Funmi Adobe is leading a class session at an art studio in Lagos, Nigeria, where she trains students on paper craft, showing them how to shape flowers and other decorative items from recycled paper. The self-taught artist says she wanted to make good use of an unwanted paper and develop her passion for handcrafted decor as a means of artistic expression. Funmi's displays cost $40 and above, depending on the complexity of the design. The artist says she wants to experiment with more paper craft techniques and grow her services to reach more clients in the country. Well, next up, a large wall of light from mobile phones illuminated partygoers in Warsaw, Poland on Sunday. 2,000 recycled mobile phones were affixed to the walls of a room in a building in the Polish capital for an all-night house party. Taking a month to gather and a week to mount, the concept of LED mobile phone wall came from local resident Carolina Guillon, who felt phones negatively impacted on the way people socialize at parties. After entering a competition to co-host the latest in a series of epic parties, Guillon wanted to focus her guests' attention on the dance floor and away from being on their phones. People spend an average of 3 hours and 43 minutes per day on their mobile phones, and there is a growing trend now of unplugged parties where phones are banned or locked away. Well, and finally, hip-hop dance classes help senior citizens to keep fit in Japan, where more than a quarter of the population are aged over 65. A group of street dancers in Tokyo, with an average age of 61, call themselves the Senior Monsters. The dancing group is one of many that are helping elderly Japanese dancers shatter stereotypes of what aging means in the oldest country in the world. With fewer young and more elderly people, dance schools are cashing in on their this rapidly growing market. Experts said more healthy and active lifestyle could help Japan put a brake on its ballooning medical costs, which topped $380 billion in fiscal year 2017, a record high. And that's what's trending. Some good dancing there. That's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings, Today Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night and have some dance.